Can you just describe the process in terms of, well, obviously you've been looking at this guy for a long time, but also even in the last few days incorporating Coach Casey and
Sure.
just what went through the decision?
Well, we obviously looked at this draft, for some time with the knowledge that we were going to have a fairly high pick. And obviously some things changed in terms of the dynamic of the draft when I would say 4 or 5, maybe 5 or 6 top prospects pulled out. Top candidates for maybe what I would say guys that would go a couple in the top 5, maybe a few in the top 10 to 15. So, the draft changed quite dramatically, but all along we've talked about our needs on this team. We've talked about, finding not just something that would fit those needs, but we talked about finding the best talent. And I can tell you that without question, we have found a combination of the best talent and the best fit for this team. This young man is thought of as the best young 5 prospect out there. Regardless of where he's from, everybody in the league has, quite a few people in the league, let's put it this way, have been sending text messages, phone messages, speaking to us on the phone. And it's not just my phone blowing up, it's Maurizio's phone, it's Mark Eversley's phone, Wayne Embry's phone. Everybody involved is saying, excellent pick, perhaps the best pick in the draft, based on, again, what this young man has and in terms of his potential. Obviously, there's some concerns about, the buyout and where and when that gets resolved and where and when he comes. That's got to be less of a concern right now. We said we'd set out to get the best talent and the best player, and he clearly fit the bill for us at 5. We're very, very pleased with the pick. I know that there's been some angst out there already with respect to reaction. Can't worry about that. I can only worry about the short-term and long-term growth of this franchise. And the direction is clear. We needed to address the needs at the center position. We've got a bright young prospect in the mix now, and this pick is going to be one that people look back at and say, that was the right guy.
You think you can get him here next year?
Doug, I don't know that. I need to dive in a little bit more into the buyout issues. I've got a lot of knowledge of where that process is. I've spoken not only to the U.S. agent, Leon Rose, but to his Lithuanian agent, Šarūnas Broga. I've also spoken to Miško Reznatovich, who's the gentleman that's representing the club in Lithuania. And I know that there's been a lot of back and forth about the buyout. I actually have a copy of an unsigned buyout agreement that was sent to me today, so I know what the parameters of the deal look like from a standpoint of how much it costs the young man. You know that NBA clubs are subject to only contributing $500,000. We're obviously looking at that as cost of doing business here. But with respect to the process and the discussion of whether or not he comes this year, I can make an argument for and against him coming right away. There's an argument for him to be here because he will be under our web, and we'll work with him in developing him, getting him stronger, which is something that absolutely needs to occur. But this young man also has a 3-year contract right now with his club team. They use him in such a way that he hasn't really developed his offensive skill set as much, or he hasn't utilized his offensive skill set as much as he is even capable. But I think the one thing he is exceptional at is setting screens, rolling hard to the basket, catching, finishing, keeping the ball high. That's a lost art. Amir Johnson does a pretty good job of that. You're talking about, though, a 7-foot young man, great bounce, great agility, gets out, defends well. He's all arms and legs right now, but you're talking about a solid athlete with a good frame. He's got a chance to become a very strong player. It's just going to take some time and take some work. Again, if he's under our web, that would be easier to monitor. But if he goes back to Lithuania, plays in that league, I see us having, perhaps even part of the negotiation would be to have some involvement in that process. Having a coach on the ground over there we've talked about. I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time there monitoring his progress. They just got a new coach in place about midway through the last, let's say it was about 2 months ago. They fired their coach, put a new coach in place. I'd love to sit down and talk to him and find out what his plans are for the individual as part of this whole discussion and negotiation. So there's a lot to be said. Now, one of the reasons I do believe that the agreement wasn't signed was, there was some people concerned about timing. Some teams wanted him over right away. I've got to take a long-term view of this pick and a long-term view of his acquisition. And we've got to try to determine what's right for him and right for this organization. So we'll take one step at a time. Right now, I've just got to get on a plane and get over there. And I've already talked to Leon Rose, and we plan to go over and meet. I spoke to Mishko last week in Treviso, so I kind of had a feel for where things were. Saw the agreement today, have a feel of where things are there. And we'll see if we can make some changes to that, or if we have to just accept it. But if it's just the buyout that's in place, I'm comfortable with that. I know that that buyout calls for him to stay one more year. And again, if that's the case, we'll make the most of it, and we'll try to have some sort of relationship with the club so that we all benefit from this. And I know there's a great relationship with the Federation. Lennis Cleese is obviously thought of very highly over there. I've met with people from the Federation when I was there scouting Jonas earlier. And let's just say there's some good groundwork in place, and when I get there, I'll have a better feel.
Bryan, coming off the season you've just come off, how can you, in good conscience, draft a player that may not be here next year?
Steve, I think that, again, it's most important that I make the right decisions for the organization. And, there's been some talk. I saw a little bit of Dwayne's interview earlier where, how could you do this? You're on a 2-year contract and, you got, a 3-year contract, whatever it is. The bottom line is, again, we all have a big picture vision of this team. Steve, one of the things that we do is also plan for the future. We've got a lot of flexibility that we've created. Part of that flexibility is going to be put to work in free agency. Some of it could be utilized in trades that you can acquire players into space. Same flexibility is the word. The other is you can, deal with your own roster. And if you know everything I know about where we are with some of those discussions, and you have a bigger picture, I can't help you with the instant gratification. I'm not going to serve you in that way. What I will do is serve this organization and serve this fan base the way that we feel we need to act to build this basketball team into a winner. And we've got a lot of confidence in the young players that we have under contract. I'm excited about what I'm seeing out of them, their commitment to training, their commitment to working, their commitment to their physicality and where they are in strength and conditioning. And, we feel like we're a lot further along than most. So we'll have to open it up when we start this next season and see just where we are.
Didn't you say almost those words exactly at the beginning of last season?
I don't know. I'm going to have to go back and read the transcripts. But I think what we said was that...
You for last, you said we're going to surprise people. We have more confidence in the young players. Something along, I'm paraphrasing now, but it sounded pretty much the same thing to me.
Well, I think what we did do, we set out with a good young team, and we said we were going to develop that young team. We actually were somewhat comfortable knowing we were going in without a big contract, $126 million dead weight, if you will, that was going to hold us back long-term into building this thing. So we think we made some great strides this year. Had there not been so many injuries, we probably would have won a few more games, but we wouldn't be sitting here with the 5th pick tonight making his draft selection that I think is going to be a very positive addition to this team for the next several years.
When you used the word shocked that he was still around at 5, thought he was going to go 4 with
that be a fair characterization?
No,
Just
not at all.
Draw already.
We have a pretty good read on where things are at the top of the draft. We nailed the first three, and the fourth one was where there was uncertainty, and I wasn't shocked.
Is there a current NBA comparison for him?
I don't like to make comparisons. Sometimes I will. Sometimes I think right now I'm going to protect him in that. Even Wayne talks about maybe a young Zydrunas Ilgauskas. That's probably the closest thing because Wayne had him. He's long, and at the time I would say that Z was probably a little bit further along offensively, a little bit more fluid offensively. But this kid's got something different defensively. I think he's got better instincts, and I think he's more active. I think he's longer than Z, actually. He's bouncier than Z at that time. If you remember, Z had some questionable feet, and there were some concerns there. This is a young man that's got a lot of life in his body, and he's 19 years old. He's got a ways to go, but this is a great long-term pick. Again, we don't get the kind of feedback from the GMs and the personnel people in the league immediately after the pick if we didn't make a great selection, and very happy about it.
Ryan, did you at all entertain thoughts of trading the pick? Were there any discussions with teams? Or
There
anything?
was. If Jonas was off the board, we were looking at maybe moving back a few spots. We had a couple of deals that were subject to consideration. Some were dealing with players being swapped, including picks. Some were just moving back and picking up other assets, additional picks and or later pick. So it was all thought of, but our target all along has been Jonas. His numbers from an analytics viewpoint are off the charts. That's why a number of teams that are high on those kinds of things were chasing this pick. I had multiple conversations with teams that were interested in acquiring 5 for the purpose of getting him, yet he slid past Cleveland. Cleveland was also looking for another pick because I believe they were looking to take one player, bring him in, and park the other guy. But again, having said that, I'm glad that they got cold feet about the buyout, and he fell in our laps. And if, again, Jonas was on the board, we were going to keep 5. If Jonas was off the board, we may have made a move, and some of those conversations can ultimately lead to other things that we've already talked about, and it might involve some future players. But we need to get through this evening first.
Knowing what you know about the buyout right now, what is the worst case scenario in terms of how long it's going to take to get him over in your mind? Right
Well, the important point to make is that right now there's no official buyout because it's not a signed document. There's a buyout that's been more or less constructed that would have him be gone for the next year. So he would come the following season. In the event that no buyout ever gets signed, he's got a 3-year contract, but at that point the club loses him for absolutely nothing. So that's not a very good scenario for them. So again, you're looking from 0 years to 3 years, but something will happen in between, I'm sure.
Given the uncertainty of the CBA, are you worried at all with just banking on free agency, not knowing exactly how much money you're going to have to spend?
Not knowing what the rules are, there's a lot of unknowns right now, and it's not just Toronto that's wondering what the rules are going to be. We're all looking and paying attention, waiting to know what that cap flexibility looks like. I know what it looks like today. It is important to note that should Jonas stay over a year, once the regular season starts, his number would come off as a cap charge, so it would yield additional flexibility to add a player at that point. So there are some benefits to that, potentially. Again, I know what the salary slot is and how much it is based on today's rules, and we'll see where that goes and how it changes. But I'm not banking necessarily on free agency. We're looking at it with a keen eye. We've got a lot of guys targeted that we could address, needs now, and possibly bring in more experience that will help us win sooner rather than, again, the longer-term plan. But the most, challenging thing for someone in my position is making sure that I keep an eye on the short term, but I have to have an eye on the long term for what's best for this organization. And again, not knowing what Jonas's future is this particular year, long term, this is a great piece for this team.
Bryan, is there a deadline by which point you have to have this deal done? Because if there's a lockout or a labor stoppage, in some ways, isn't it to your benefit just to let the kid play and, Lithuania while everybody else is walking around the picket line?
I think it's safe to say the sooner we get clarity on the topic, the better, and I think I need to leave it at that. We looked at, there was a lot of talk about Bismack Biyombo being our target. In a similar way, Bismack is a young, talented player, and we did have a lot of interest in him. He was probably number 2 on our list. We talked about a scenario where maybe it's best for him to go play somewhere overseas and continue to develop and work on his body and everything. So again, that's another guy that we would look at and say it's best for the long term. But here's a guy that if you could construct the right situation where he could have gone and played in Europe and had an NBA out, at some point, we even talked about that. So there's a plan in place, and the plan is to get better not only now but into the future. And getting young bigs that have athleticism and length and talent, these opportunities don't come along too often, so you jump on them.
How surprised were you that Thompson went so early?
I'm very happy for Tristan Thompson. He's been very impressive in his pre-draft schedule, if you will. He's been very impressive in our interview that we had in Chicago with him. I think his workouts have been impressive, at least in Chicago he was good, and then he came here, and I wouldn't say it was his best showing, but he did well. He fared well that day. I'm very happy for him that he went. I spoke to someone in Cleveland shortly after. They told me the intention was to keep him because initially it was thought that it might be a trade. I know that that probably broke a few hearts when he went number 4 because there was a few people behind us that were eyeing, I think, Bismack Biyombo and Tristan Thompson, and I'm pleased for him, and I'm pleased for Canadian basketball that he was able to go as high, and he's going to be a great pro. He's going to be a terrific kid. He's got a desire to get better. He's got a great motor. I think he comes from a great family, and he's got a bright future.
There's a correlation between the emergence of all these Canadian players, I guess starting with him, and the fact there's an NBA team in this city.
I think it's interesting. You talk to some of them, and you say, why is it all happening at once? I think for one, it's not just Ontario where you're seeing the development of the game, but you're seeing it across the board, and maybe the birth of this franchise and the birth of even the Vancouver Grizzlies at one point opened up a lot of eyes to the game. It's not that the game hasn't existed, but there clearly is a lot more infrastructure. What we do as an organization in terms of spreading the word of basketball across the country, with the 3-on-3 tournaments and the various clinics that we put on and the games that we've staged in other markets, and training camp being held in other markets, it can only help with the awareness. But participation-wise, the 2 fastest growing sports are soccer and basketball in this country. And so as people come to this country, I truly believe they're probably closer to basketball and soccer fans than they are hockey fans. So we've got a chance, again, to continue growing the game. Our help with Canada Basketball, both from a sweat equity perspective, board participation, Maurizio being involved, with leading the senior men's team. That's invaluable. It's invaluable to I think the growth of the game. But basketball is also a very it's an urban game. Let's face it. At the end of the day, not, there's a lot of talent in this city that probably years ago got exposed to the game, fell in love with it, and has now risen to this level. And I've got to say, even getting out there and seeing, some of these young kids at a young age, I'm pretty impressed with where things are going. It can get a lot better. There's 300 million people in the United States. There's, 33 million in Canada. And we're a lot more spread out. We don't have the same kind of infrastructure, but we're working on it. We're working daily as a board at Canada Basketball to try to figure out ways to make it better and to grow that infrastructure. But to see this quality group that's emerging, not just now, but the next few waves, it's exciting. It's great to see, and you got coaching is a big part of that. What we're doing to develop coaches and referees and everything along the way. We're bringing again some real technical aspect of it to the table, and I think that the game's got a bright future in this country.
Can you update us on where you stand with Barbosa right now?
I don't stand anywhere with Leandro. Leandro's got a contract decision to make. Saturday's the deadline for him to make that decision, and we'll see where it goes. It's a player option. It's his option to decide whether or not he wants that year guaranteed or he wants to test free agency. I was hopeful to know before the draft. There was, I think, a little bit of back and forth with us and his agent, agents to discuss an extension. The extension really didn't, play into our strategy, really because more than anything, not knowing what the rules are going to look like, I didn't want to make a commitment that was going to, possibly restrict our movement going forward. So depending on what he's in search of, whether it's the 1 year of security or many years of security, we'll have to see what his choice is. But I love Leandro Barbosa. I think he's a terrific young man. I think he's a great basketball player. He plays the way I want to play. I know the way Dwayne wants to play, which is flow offense, and he's probably capable of playing even a lot better defense than what he's shown. But we'll see how that system's designed to help him. But he's got quickness and good lateral speed. So I think that you'll even see, if he comes back, you'll see a better Leandro Barbosa defensively. But I think we will see a better defensive unit out there always.
So on a night you pick a 7-foot European, what does it mean for your other 7-foot European?
Well, we've said all along that one probably is more better suited as a 4, and I would say the pick tonight, Jonas, is better suited as a 5. If and when they ultimately play together and they're physically ready, I think that. It'll be an interesting combination, but I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We've got a season, obviously, to prepare for. We've got free agency to address. We've got trades to pursue. It's going to be an interesting thing. But, again, what I see more than anything out of our young guys is this development that's happening and their eagerness to get better, and you see a lot of good things.
I know you always go for the best pick, best possible talent that you can assess, but you did talk about the angst, and there does appear to be, when I read Twitter, some consumer angst with this pick. I think probably because of Bargnani's polarizing effect on the populace here. The idea of picking another European is not going over that well with your fan base. How do you feel about that?
I can't worry about where they're from. I can only worry about how they play and how they fit into the plan and what they bring to the table. And again, I can't worry about me. I can't worry about my contract situation. I got to worry about this franchise. Winning basketball games and becoming better as a franchise will ultimately sell, and that's what we're shooting for. That's what we're striving for. You've already seen some changes that we've made. We're talking about different things, how to improve the roster in and around what we currently have, improving organically. That growth organically is huge. And I think a lot of teams like where we are. When I talk to people in the league, they like what we have as a good base. They like our flexibility. They love this pick. We've got some tools. Oh, of course they are. Of course they are. But, Dave, at the end of the day, you know, I've got relationships with enough people in this business that I know when they're blowing smoke and when they're not. And this is a solid pick. Trust me.
If the pick doesn't come over, does it affect your plan to attack the agency and trades? How much does it impact?
It'll have some, but again, no one wants to put too much on him too quickly, too much pressure on Jonas if he does come. You don't want to put a guy in a situation where, you know, look, I've always said you got to get the young guys out there. You got to get them experience. That's the best way to improve not only them individually, but as a group, you know, and as a franchise. But we do want to win. We want to win now, and, you know, we're working on that.